The Trump administration threatens to crack down on illegal immigration with sweeping ICE raids. Some organizations are ramping up their efforts to take a stand against them. Former Maryland Democratic gubernatorial candidate Krish Vignarajah was recently named the president and CEO of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. The Baltimore-based organization advocates for migrants and refugees. And after being named CEO, Vignarajah, who's a refugee herself, said that she, quote, is committed to ensuring that all immigrants seeking a better life in America are afforded the same opportunities as my family's received to pursue their dreams. Well, Krish joins us now from Baltimore with more. So, Krish, give us a sense of how religious organizations like yours, the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, are dealing with expanding and helping the migrant community in the U.S. at the border.
Part of our effort is obviously focused on the, border humanitarian needs. Because the government hasn't stepped up its response in terms of the influx coming across the southern border, it has really been faith-based organizations like LIRS that have been leading the charge, that have been on the front lines. So part of our efforts have been when ICE has dropped off 80 individuals, 100 asylum seekers. We found churches, shelters, a community that have rallied around these individuals. Will provide room, board, help with onward travel. For unaccompanied minors who are coming across the border, we provide transitional foster care all across the country, as well as kind of family settings of what we call group homes. So settings where 6 children, 8 children, 10 children will live, because we know that if we don't provide these family-like settings, these children end up in facilities like Homestead, which are warehousing thousands of children at a time. And so when you think about 6 children dying just in the last several months, you realize that it is a faith-based, community-based response that needs to respond.
And your organization launched a campaign recently that you described as an immediate call to action. What exactly is that?
Sure. So it's called United Sanctuaries of America. It was in response to the threat of mass deportations. It was a recognition that sanctuary has been something that churches, synagogues have been, along with other houses of worship, have been providing for not just decades, but truly centuries. But it's also consistent with American federal policy, whether it's been the Bush administration, the Obama administration, or the Trump administration. There's always been a recognition that churches as well as schools provide safe spaces. And so we have been rallying a call to action where churches, faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, individuals have responded to this national effort to provide sanctuary to the most vulnerable families, children who are being targeted by these raids.
Some people feel that Congress isn't able to fill the void that your organizations, religious organizations like yours, is doing. So what can average citizens who might want to take a stand against mass deportation raids, what can they do at this point?
It's a great question, and one that, you see the response at some of these national protests I consistently get, which is, I'm seeing what's happening on the news, how can I respond? And the honest answer is there is so much that individuals can do. We have volunteers from across the country that literally will travel with our organization to the border, whether it's New Mexico and Arizona, where we're really leading the efforts. It's about couples that have come to us and said, I want to be able to provide that transitional foster care. We are in dire need of parents who are willing, even for just short amount of time, to take in children. Of course, financial donations help the work that we're doing along the border. It isn't something that is government funded. We're funding it out of our own pockets. But it's even lighter lifts like detention visitations. So many of the migrant children, parents, individuals that we work with, they see just hostile faces. They're put into the most horrendous conditions, even on American soil. And so having, a person sit across a table and say, we welcome you, that is who America has always been, is an incredible overture. And so for us, what we hope is that people realize that, yes, you see these torturous images of children, parents suffering, but what I always see is the volunteers in our communities, the congregations who in some cases have nothing, that have found a way to dig deep and have shown the strength, the best of America.
When you deal with these communities and those affected, what stands out to you with your interactions with them?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, look, in some ways, this issue is very personal to me. My family fled a civil war when I was 9 months old and came to America. And I know, thank God that America welcomed my family just as they welcomed the tired, the poor, the huddled masses. And I know a lot has changed since then in some ways, but a lot has stayed the same. And today there's a family just like mine that wants to come here and raise their children and pay taxes and live a safe and decent life, just as so many Americans have done before. And we welcome these immigrants and migrants not because they are Americans, but because we are Americans. And that, I think, is what I see. The board chair of our organization said this at an opening prayer for one of our meetings, from darkness, light. And every time I'm in one of our communities, whether it's along the border or in Seattle or Portland or Chicago or New York City, it is incredible how people, congregations, businesses, nonprofits, governments have stepped up. And I hope that that message is we are fighting, I think, for what is going to define our nation. I know that we are in tough times. And when you see these detention centers, when you see the deaths, of course, they are searing images. But I really do think that we will come out of this stronger and better, and remembering what America has always been, which is a nation that was born and built by immigrants.
Krish Vignarajah, thank you very much, Krish, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.